In a world where information seems to travel at the speed of light and traffic at a snail's pace, where the agenda of those at the helm doesn't always reflect the pressures on the streets, where the rubber hits the road, where there's queue of issues needing to be interrogated in the name of speaking truth to power.
Welcome to a place at the table,
where we set the agenda,
table the issues that matter to you,
and invite you to take a seat at the table.
It falls on me to welcome you to a place at the table this week. Time is of the essence, and some are running out of it. I'll be campaigning against rape and domestic violence. My name is Dorothy Njemanze.
Good to see you again, Dorothy. Indeed, time is of the essence. And I'm saying it's now or never as it concerns the Nigerian taxpayer.
Looks like we are following the money, Yinka. I'm following the recent trip of the presidency to France and asking the big question, who he really helped.
Yep, all of us now. Welcome back, Mart. Good to see you. I'll be putting out fires on the home front. Specifically, I'm looking into refining the Nigerian Fire Service reform.
It's high time, Funke. My advocacy is equally timely. I'm saying it's never too late to take the right path in the war against HIV.
A stitch in time saves 9. Or prevention is better than cure. Take your pick. Shelters for rape and domestic violence survivors. Now, survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, SGBV, like rape and domestic violence in Abuja, Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, who need shelter may be in for grim times, as 2 private shelters that provide safe crisis and transitional shelter may shut down. Currently, they both accommodate up to 40 survivors of violence weekly. Now, since after the COVID lockdown, they have provided shelter to over 700 women and children at risk. In April 2022, the media was abuzz with the news of the death of the Christian music singer, Osinachi. People wondered why she didn't leave to leave. I can attempt to answer that. What emboldens victims to take action the most is trust that there are systems that won't traumatize them to run to for help just in case the need arises. Now, through donor funding, Nigeria has seen the emergence of sexual assault referral centers, SACs, improved coordination of states' SGBV response teams, and popularization of progressive laws like the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act or laws at state level, then Child Rights Act or laws at the state level. And then there's also development of practice directions in litigation, amongst others. Now, the critical gap remains that government has not invested enough in response to sexual and gender-based violence. What can you do to help? You can adopt a shelter. In DNF Safe Space, for instance, there are 14 children in school. The youngest on the facility is a few weeks old, and the second youngest is just about a year and was born at 1.4 kg in a taxi on the way to the hospital by a teenager. The both facilities are available online and have details of how best to help them. Farms and traders can support with perishable and non-perishables. Electric bicycles will ease, transportation to and from schools in this economy. Solar options will help access electricity through the current high power tariffs. The 16 days of activism against violence against women and girls is still on. The orange pages posted by Invictus Africa is a good place to identify the nearest facility to you or in your village if those are your areas of interest. But as this year's theme says, towards Beijing 30 plus, unite to end violence against women and girls.
It's appalling that there are no government-run shelters, despite the prevalence of sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria. And the fact that victims tend to stay in abusive situations when there are no reliable support system or trusted support system. Again, this is quite emotional for me. People also need to understand that we all need to come together to ensure that this works. We all need to come together to support the shelters for. And we also need to do more advocacy and letting people know about the shelter, because adoption, it's not just about finances, it's also about amplification. You might not be able to support, but talking to other people gives them an opportunity to support.
In the whole of Abuja, according to the Humanity Index,
Yes.
which was released last year, I think they released one just yesterday. I've not seen the figure, but as at last year, the FCT only had one SAC center.
Yes.
One. So I was a bit surprised when I saw that you said 2. I was like, oh, okay. So they've doubled it by 100%.
No, there are 2 private shelters, but one SAC. The SAC is in the hospital, the General Hospital in Buhari.
Yeah.
But the 2 shelters are private shelters.
Exactly. So when you look at the FCT is the capital of the country. It also, when you look at the numbers in terms of sexual violence and everything, it's quite high. And to think that you only have one SAC center, which is probably why, in terms of the grading, it's on the amber, which is like the second to the last level. So, what organizations like you are doing, it's exceptional, and people must understand that it's not just because you don't have anything to do, because you chose to do it. And this is where there's not much to say than to say that there must be support. There's no other way to describe this, but there must be support. Support from government. Government must do its own, must do its own bit, must play its own part. But private institutions as well must also play its own part.
Well, for me, I like, Dorothy, that you made reference to Osinachi, because till date, I think that's the biggest high-profile case of domestic violence, of national magnitude,
Because
magnitude.
she seemed to be the perfect victim.
Yeah.
She seemed empowered.
Right. So, and then I like the fact that you said she couldn't leave to live. That is important to know and to highlight in this advocacy of yours, because that is where a lot of women are stuck. You talked about systems, and it is also correct to say there are no systems, even as we mouth rape, domestic violence. Just as Yinka said, pointed out, 2 in Abuja, 2 private shelters, and 1 run by I don't know who. The first question that came to my mind was, is the Women Affairs Ministry running any shelter? Do you know?
There's a facility that exists, but is it functional? I don't know.
Oh, there you go. Then we're looking at 700 women and children. Is it from one shelter or from the 2 shelters
Collectively,
combined?
it's way over that.
So where are they going to go now that you're losing the facility that you're in at the moment?
Well, these are the questions, and so these are the pressures. And we have people who have said things like, look, the day you let go of us, just like that, we take our lives the next day, because there's nothing else for us to do.
There's nowhere to return to.
There's nowhere to return to. Do you want to return people who are fleeing because the father or the family, the father is a rapist and the mother believes that...
it should be in the family.
No, the mother believes that the child, is seducing the husband, amongst other things, Okay. So where does the child get help from? God entrusts children into families, and families are desecrating children, and the children have nowhere to run.
What I just want to say is that I've always been a fan of action versus talk shop. It's 16 days of activism now. Everybody is posting on social media, talking, so that they can be seen. It is not about being seen, it's about acting on whatever the themes and the topics are, all these day for this, day for that. We need accommodation for 2 private shelters in Abuja.
Urgently.
Put your mouth where your put your
money.
Put your money where your mouth. Put your money where your mouth is. Go help them.
Activism is not about talk; it's about activity. What are you going to do? So I like the way you broke it down in your presentation when you talked about the fact that farmers can bring perishables and different people can bring anything. So whatever you have, I think it is time for you to come out, support Dorothy, support what the work she's doing, and nothing is too small nothing, 5 kg or 10 kg of bag or 50 kg or whatever you can just do, support. If you have a property that you're not using, if your property is among the 753 properties that was seized, I think let's make good use of these properties now. And I also think that this is what the government should be doing. So, for example, the EFCC should look at, after getting forfeiture of some of these properties, they should look at organizations like yours and are doing great stuff, and just give one of those buildings to you to be able to use it to support government's efforts, because in the real sense, this is what government should be doing. A functional government should have a welfare system that helps its citizens. So if you don't have it and other people are helping, then you should also help to ameliorate whatever expenses or suffering that these people are already going through.
Thank you, indeed, Martins. So yes, the Queen's Shelter and the DNF Safe Space hope that you would support urgently, for the benefit of the survivors that are clinging on to us for dear life. I'll be adding to my string of proverbs by saying, make hay while the sun shines.
Yes, Dorothy, although we're in the last month of the year, we'll keep our feet on the pedal. If you've been following the news lately, you will have noticed a small issue of some tax bills dividing opinions. The 4 bills, which aims to ensure uniformity in tax revenue administration across Nigeria, have the following additional benefits: consolidation of different tax laws into one via the repeal of 11 existing tax laws and amendment of 13, zero-rated VAT on exports, food, and even rent, exemptions from pay for those on minimum wage, and reduced personal income tax for over 90% of workers, exemptions from company income tax for small and medium-scale enterprises with turnover less than 50 million, and reduction of the same CIT from 30% to 25% over 2 years, as well as the elimination of the minimum tax provision. With all these benefits, why then is Governor Zulum saying that only Lagos will benefit from the reform and that it will disproportionately disadvantage the North? Well, it boils down to Section 77 of the Nigeria Tax Bill, which prescribes a new formula for distribution of the VAT from 20% to 60% derivation. According to Governor Zulum, if the PIA can take 20 years to pass, why not the Nigeria Tax Bill? Well, Mr. Governor, we can't wait for 20 years. And by the way, your attacks on the bills are based on mistruths. Allow me to elaborate. 1. Section 22(12) provides for the attribution of VAT on the basis of location, that is the place of consumption. This means the headquarters effect will no longer be the case. Companies will be required to file their VAT returns where they are consumed. Number 2, the share of the states have been increased from 50% to 55%, compensating for any possible loss from derivation. Number 3, the large proportion of VAT collected is actually from imports and international services, which is not attributed to any state. So, for a region that boasts of 55% of the population and high poverty rate, you'll think they will be excited at the prospect of lower taxes for over 90% of their population, and will be challenged to leverage that population to expand consumption and grow their IGR. Unfortunately, there is no time to wait for anyone. For the Nigeria tax bill, it is now or never.
It's now or never. I don't know what Governor Zulum is going on about. I think maybe his aides and advisors may have led him.
He's not the only one. I mean,
I know that there are other people who've been making noise, and I know that even I think the Senate have stepped down the proceedings now.
No, I mean, it's gone to second reading, so I think it's gone to committee now, and then they will do the public hearings and all the other things.
Yes, and you said it, 20 years is too long. We cannot wait for 20 years. As you said, I know that some Dogara has weighed in on the conversation. I know that Senator Shehu Sani has also weighed in on it, that, look, guys, this is going to be good in the long run. I don't know why there is this backlash, against the signing into law of this bill.
So I think it's a political conversation. It's much more
obviously.
political than it is about an economic conversation. And I say this because if you look at the North currently, the North is basically looking for every opportunity to make sure that they're hungry for power. So they want power to come back to the North. And they will do anything to ensure that Tinubu's administration becomes very unpopular so that they can hinge on something to make sure that power comes back to the North. Be that as it may, I think that if there is anything this administration is getting right, is the fact that it's trying to devolve powers, and the entire idea of devolution was that the federalism,
fiscal federalism,
fiscal federalism essentially is actually followed through and through. That's the number one thing I see that Tinubu's administration is getting correctly, and it deserves some kind of applause and recommendation. This is the first time I'm actually commending the administration. So yes. So when we have this, I think that it is important that we throw politics aside and consider development for once and say, okay, so this administration has brought something that nobody has ever done before. We are talking about consumption in terms of VAT, and it's going to, so for example, the Zulum is actually wrong, because if you look at the industries, majority of them are here. Let's say, for example, Guinness or whatever, everything, Nestle and the rest of them that used to be, I don't know who is now left anyway, but most of them are leaving. But the ones that are left, let's say they are producing in Lagos, and now the consumption is all over the country. If you are getting 20% of that, you know, it helps you, it brings more resources to the hands of the government, of the state government, and they can do more things because they've got that. And that's actually an IGR for your own state. So you can play with so much money. So the point to me, like I keep saying, is a political conversation, and that they will do anything to ensure that they make sure the administration doesn't look good, and then so they can get power in 2027. But I think that the new reforms of the tax in Nigeria is a welcome development, and we should all embrace it regardless of whatever lenient politically or ethnic backgrounds that we have, because it is something that will move us forward. It's just the same thing as the local government autonomy that we've always been clamoring for. So Tinubu has done that, or his administration is doing that, and then we are also looking at these tax reforms as well. So at some point we will now begin to not look so much at the center, the presidency, because the states will have powers that will be enough and resources to be able to implement the things that we really, really want to do. But then again, one of the major concerns will be that what did the state government in Lagos do? Maybe that's what Zulum is referring to as well. When Tinubu was in power, how was IGR generated? So there might just be that little bit of trust from the average Nigerian to say, that's another conversation.
I think
really gets there.
Mart has said a lot of what I wanted to say, because collapsing 11 laws into one is a major feat. It is impressive. And moving from 20% to 60% derivation, it's even a win for the North.
Sure.
I'm going to assume Zulum's opinion is due to misunderstanding. You know, or like Mart said, it's probably a political conversation in a bid to make the present government look bad. Because doing this, they have the highest they have the highest population. Yeah, so that means they get to earn more from consumption. Yeah. And then it also, and the fact that the PIT for lower income earners, which is like a large number of their population, becomes significantly reduced or even non-existent for a lot, which gives people more disposable income and enables them to also spend more on consumption. So irrespective of how you look at it, it's still a win-win for the North. But then again, it is what it is. We need to do better and move away from regional politics towards national prosperity.
The people who have a problem with this are rooting their problem in the trust issues that exist and exploiting the available trust issues. So again, it comes down to what is your style of governance, right? You're proposing things that in the long run are beneficial to the country. There's a National Orientation Agency. How much popularization of the benefits of this has been done through the National Orientation Agency in multiple languages? We want everybody to be on the same side, right? So possibly these things are written in English and they're understood by a few people in English, but they're misinterpreted in Hausa and a few other languages to certain other places. And it is that point of misinterpretation that holds the power in those places. So if the government wants to bring everybody on table, you know, the government is duty bound to ensure that the language about understanding the provisions of, you know, the tax bills are available to all Nigerians.
Thank you for that, Dorothy. It's not just written in English; it is written in cumbersome English. That even you will have to read. Okay, so what are they saying there? What is derivative? But outside that, the National Orientation Agency, I don't think they're doing so well. I've been saying this for the past 1 year. Considering the fact that I could remember when we were younger, when a new policy is coming on, we hear them jingles on the radio. Sure. It comes in different local languages. And even the average man on the road can see that this is what is the benefits of this to me, and these are the things we need to do to achieve this. NOA, please, you need to do more.
The chairman of the reform committee was saying that when they ran the numbers, they saw that Lagos, with what they've done, consumption numbers in Lagos went from about 80-something% to 15%. So actually Lagos is going to lose out a lot, because the consumption that is attributed to Lagos today is now going to be spread all over.
Yes, so Lagos is supporting it.
Yes, Lagos is supporting it. And those are you think that it benefits the most. Actually, the one now saying, no, we want the old order. No.
And that's also, largely because Lagos has a very migratory population. So you see Ogun, Oyo, all people live in most of these places and they work in Lagos.
So money matter, now everybody matter. Let's not wait until it pinches or even bites us in the pocket.
It concerns us all. It really, really concerns us all, which is why I'm looking into our president's recent lavish trip to France. President Bola Tinubu's state visit to France reflects broader concerns about the Nigerian government's priorities in the face of significant economic and security challenges. While international diplomacy remains important, the scale of the visit and the large entourage accompanying the president raises questions about the government's efforts to tackle domestic issues, particularly poverty and economic inequality. For many Nigerians, the cost of such an elaborate trip is difficult to justify when urgent attention is needed to address the country's dire economic and social problems. Nigeria is currently facing several economic challenges, including a weakening naira, high inflation, and rising unemployment. Such lavish visits send the wrong message to Nigerian public, especially when so many struggle to make ends meet. The optics of the cost of a high-profile state visit, including travel, accommodation, and logistics for a large entourage, can run into millions of dollars, which many Nigerians view as unnecessary expenditure given the country's economic situation. This exacerbates frustrations, as many Nigerians feel that their leaders are prioritizing international relations over pressing economic issues at home. The bigger issue for me is, why is Nigeria courting France in a period where there are growing anti-French sentiments among Francophone countries in West Africa, especially in the area of military assistance and solid minerals exploration? Is this an opportunity or a curse?
International politics, very interesting right now, especially when you see the major shift that is happening and will happen, especially when you see Donald Trump, get into office. There's going to be a whole lot of shift.
Alignment and realignment.
So, and I think that countries are looking at what is going on and they're trying to position themselves, into which part will you be? I mean, Trump is not going to be an outlier. I mean, we already know who he is, what he has said is going to throw tariffs at everything. That's his own economic policy. He is going to be anti-immigration, is going to be for only those, is America only, he doesn't care about NATO. So you have the war, in Ukraine, you have the 2 wars going on in Israel, Lebanon, Gaza. And then you now have to look at the non-aligned countries, okay? Well, Nigeria used to be one.
Who can we woo?
So the question is, where does Nigeria stand? So from the fundamental basis of foreign policy, where do we stand? And that's where I have an issue with the current administration. And the question I ask is, what's our foreign policy? What is it exactly? All right? Where are we going? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to position ourselves in Africa as the strong economy and all that? Are we trying to get a permanent seat on the UN Security Council? Are we trying to, what exactly are we doing? So when you talk about this lavish trip and all the razzmatazz and everything, and by the way, you know, there was a French president that pulled up all the stumps for the president, you know, and all that, and even those two Frenchmen that were trying to sing.
You took it out of my mouth. Yeah, I like that one.
I think a lot of people are not aware that Nigeria is France's largest economic partner in the whole of Africa as of 2023. They had the most trading partner between France and Nigeria in the whole of Africa. So it's not particularly out of place for the president to go visit and also woo them to do more for them, because they are currently doing a lot, not just at the national level, also at the state levels. The French government, they've been doing a lot. I know.
But a lot of that is oil and gas, now, you know.
That is what still the biggest trade partners.
Beyond oil and gas, they're doing leather. They're doing so many things in Nigeria, really. They don't do a lot of publicity, or maybe they do on their own part. Maybe on our own part, we don't do a lot of publicity in that space. So there are two things I picked from your advocacy. Why is the president going to France, or
on a lavish.
And then the lavish trip. I would also like to point out that, do you know what it takes to move a president from point A to point B? And it would be important for us to define what makes a lavish trip. So if the president is going somewhere, there are five teams that will have to go with him. One, the security. They have to ensure that, you know, the place is secured, and then have the advanced team even before, apart from security, that will move with them. And then we have the media and communication. We have the media on one part. We have the communication on one part, because we keep complaining that they don't put out adequate media and the communication is poor. So that is like a whole team entirely. And then we have the health and personal assistance. Anything can happen to anybody at any time. There has to be people on ground. And of course, his personal aid will also have to be there. And then we have the logistics and coordination. You and I can just wake up and say, okay, I'm going for lunch. It doesn't happen like that for them. Someone has to, you know, ensure that all of this is seamless. And it is more difficult outside. And then we have the policy advisors. Things happen on the spot that, you know, he probably doesn't have the range to handle. He needs to consult with his advisors. We keep saying the presidential trips is expensive. They move with a whole bunch of people. But that is what it takes to be a president. Those are things that cannot be, that is avoidable. But also, I don't know how large the entourage to France was, but I also know that a lot of people travel by themselves because they know the president is going to be there.
Let me quickly say something. So every country, Nigeria has an embassy and an ambassador in France. And that embassy operates and is functional to the best of my knowledge and everything. And when you talk about health, security, personal assistance, and all those, they are all also, and that's one of the reasons we have an ambassador and an embassy that has all those state functionaries in the country. So the fact that you travel with your son, your family members for a state function also raises an eyebrow in itself. So are you now saying that you do not trust the personal assistance that the government in itself have, you know, that you've appointed, that the government is paying for, and the people that are also in France? If you do not trust the Nigerians, the Nigerian embassy, I say this because I know my dad was a diplomat and he was in an embassy as at that time. And before the president travels, they liaise with the embassy there to make security arrangements, to make everything for the presidents to come. That is because they also understand the value and the cost of moving almost 100 people from Nigeria to that place.
Trump said something recently. He said the BRICS should perish the thought because the president left France to South Africa for the BRICS conference. And you heard what Trump said about perishing the thought about a new currency. Don't even think about it. Otherwise, we'll slam you with this and that. And I smiled, just as you're smiling, I smiled where I was there. What's wrong with this man? It's not even there yet. Like, it's you against the rest of the world. So you see, the point I'm trying to make is it's different at the international level. There's another playing field entirely. And a president cannot sit at home and say, oh, I don't want to offend my people. I don't want to travel too many times. You have to, because you have to, roll with the big boys, number one, in quote, and you also have to be where the action is.
You spoke to the lavish cost of the entourage. You also spoke to how many people are needed to be there. And I'm happy you also brought up the fact that there are already people there that can cut down the costs. So to what extent is there compliance with what should be? How, again, are these optics explained to the common people? I deal with survivors very often. And so when they watch the news and they hear this kind of things, they say, we never see food chop. See the kind of things where they did.
Yeah, but they don't understand governance.
I hear that they don't understand it. And so the question is, the people who you count on for votes, to what extent do you prioritize their mental health? Yes, and I say it because how do they digest the news? How are they able to assimilate what is going on without having breakdowns? If everybody dies of cardiac arrest because they feel, oh boy,
the president is gallivanting.
Exactly, you understand. What then do you have remaining? And who is a leader without the followers? So again, it speaks to emotional intelligence, improving the communication around.
That'll be the work of the media.
Well, Shebi, there's supposed to be media on this
going
same
to
team
France
from you.
to do this so that it can have a better future.
So, and has this media not, the media people, have they not seen the concerns raised? In what way have they addressed it? Is it important to address it or not? Absolutely, it is important. It is important because everything, feeds into how the president is perceived at the end of the day.
Thank you for that.
Let me just add that there's a whole lot going on. You remember that we had the visit of the Indian president who was here. The president as well flew from France to South Africa. Okay. These are BRICS countries. Having a conversation. And I'm pretty sure that one of the agenda on that conversation is Trump's threat as well. So they have to look at it and, maybe see where they are aligned. But like you said, whichever way we spin it in terms of the foreign policy, we must also look at the fiscal side of it.
Economic realities
and say that we cannot say that we are poor. I mean, interest rates are going up every day and the government is splurging as if there's no tomorrow.
So beyond the optics, there has to be accountability, which must start from the top to the motive behind actions taken on behalf of others, and all that needs to be scrutinized. Even the chop my money that was sung. What kind of the chopping of the money is it that Francis is chopping to the point where they have to say?
For me, I think it's just a song. It's just a song they picked. Yeah. So speaking of accountability, anyway, it's time to lay bare matters of the fire service reform. I know you'd agree with me that we have had one fire too many. The vision of the Federal Fire Service of Nigeria, has seen on their website, is to produce firefighters proficient in the prevention and mitigation of fire and other emergencies. But how well are they equipped to do this? There have been multiple fire incidents across Nigeria in recent times. I'm worried about the inability of the Federal Fire Service to curtail the infernos through the various state fire services. In the last 1 week, these include the fire at the iconic broadcasting house Ikoyi, Lagos, the market on Lagos Island, the one in Abuja, Kwara, all over the nation. There is always one fire incident after the other. It is heartbreaking that not much of goods and materials could be salvaged in all of these fire incidents. On the average, the fire service spends 5 hours battling fire. They arrive late and then don't have enough water to put out the fire. The challenge is certainly not in funding. There has been a substantial increase in the federal allocation to the service. In Rolake Ogunfeyitimi's article, she states that from 9.6 billion in 2019 to 11.9 billion in 2020 and 16.5 billion in 2021. As a matter of fact, in 2022, it was 10.4 billion, a drop, but in 2023, a whopping 51.7 billion. And that's about $58 million was allocated to the Nigerian Fire Service. All of these have not translated to better services. Is the National Fire Academy equipped enough to train our firefighters? That will be the next question. In 2023, the Lagos State Fire Service recorded 1,642 fire incidents between January and June. 42 persons were killed, 122 people rescued. Property worth 14.62 billion naira were destroyed. The former Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, said the country lost property worth 3 trillion naira and 136 lives to fire incidents in 2021. I ask, what should be the ratio of fire services to a population of people? Do you even know how to use a fire extinguisher? Let's come to the personal level. The fire service can mount a nationwide campaign on that, like the Federal Road Safety successfully did with seat belts. Secondly, do you know you can engage certified firefighters in your market, in your estate, office, and home? The Federal Fire Service is under the Ministry of Interior. So, Minister Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, it's time. It's time to further the 2007 reform of the Nigerian Fire Service for the benefit of all.
Can we clap for this advocacy? Because right now, very timely, very timely.
It's a much important advocacy, and we cannot address this issue without looking at the Fire Service Act. That is, if we have one.
No, we do.
Okay, so what does it say? What does it say about the turnaround time? Say from the moment you call the fire service, how many minutes does it take them to get to you?
When was
how many minutes?
Brought up?
How many people are going to come to you, get to you first? Who are the supporting team that will come, and all of that? Are all of those things defined? Because if we don't have something we are meant to aspire to, it's always going to be a lot of anyhowness. And like you mentioned, do we know how to use fire extinguisher? No, I just know you hold it up. I don't know. What else are we supposed to do? I don't know. That's why the fact that there are fire extinguishers in the car, in the apartments and all of that, we just buy it because they say we should buy it and it's part of the building code. We are not really sensitized on how to use it. The onus is not also just on the government, though. We should also take responsibility for learning that. But like you said, it's important to also do a nationwide advocacy on how to use all of these things. But we need to have a defined framework. We should have something, even if it's Fire Service 2050, something we aspire to be and say, okay, by 2050, we'll have at least one firefighter to a 1,000 population.
Precisely.
Right? And then we'll say in every 5-kilometer radius, there will be a fire station. As far as we don't have all of that, it's still going to be taking 5 hours for fire victims to get any form of support.
Thank you, Zumah.
So while we're thinking about the ratio of firefighters to the population, I'm still trying to wrap my head over the current ratio of police officers to, everybody in the population. And I know that there are more police officers than fire service firefighters.
Right.
So that another version of the grim reality in your face. Well, the issues are there. The people in charge of the affairs, fire service-wise, no. So you spoke about the act, the Fire Service Act. What exists in it? In what year was it done? What transformation has happened? How much in tune with current realities is the law that exists? These are the gaps. Again, I'm happy you spoke to the need for the need for more publicity on use of fire extinguishers amongst everything. What is the relationship with the fire service, those around the fire service, and the National Orientation Agency? I will never stop talking about the importance of the National Orientation Agency because they're everywhere in Nigeria. People are collecting salaries for being everywhere. So if there are critical issues like this, why do we not have videos saying this is how to use the fire extinguisher? These are the different kinds of fire extinguishers. These are the cylindrical ones. These are the balls. And this is how to do it. You can check for accredited extinguisher suppliers in so place. You can check for, this is how to know what is right you know, the expired ones. At some point,
because
I found out that
ones,
people
yes.
sell expired ones and all those kind of things. So this is what to do. These are the checks. These are not the checks. If that kind of if you go to their websites, do you have such materials on their websites? If you don't, it's an abysmal failure. It's it's irresponsibility. And if they cannot partner with other ministries, departments, or agencies in Nigeria to push forward what is beneficial to them, then there's a problem.
The question I want to ask is, does anybody know what's the fire code?
Fire what?
The
fire code.
The hotline for...
No. We actually have a fire code.
Okay.
For, I think it's by state, is also for Nigeria. Because those are things that define how we respond to issues of fire. Each building has a fire code that they must respect. The residential, the industrial, the roads.
So you're doing their work?
Huh?
You are doing their work.
Yeah, and so this is part of the problem, that Nigerians don't know about the fire code. You talked about the law. There's a law that I think it was during Obasanjo's time that they passed that law. I'm not sure.
And there was a reform in 2007, which was why I put it in the monologue that it's time to further it.
Yes. So the reality really is that first, and I agree with you on the National Orientation Agency part of it, that there must be an enforcement, a lot of education. But also we have to ensure that at the basic level, for everything you do, people, institutions, whether you're an individual, whether you're a government, whether you are a private company, you must respect the fire code. There is a mayor, I think it's the mayor of New York, that got into trouble recently, and he was indicted really by the FBI. And one of the points of his indictment was the fact that he approved a visit of a foreign leader to a building that had not passed the fire code.
This is how serious they take it elsewhere in the world.
It wasn't as if he took bribe or anything. He approved a visit, to a building that had not passed the fire code. And that was indictable to them because they value life. In this country, you see people that whether they are supposed to be in the building or not, everybody shows up. You see the president or the governor is visiting a site, you see one entourage following him. And then you begin to see that from our own way of doing things, we have no respect for order, we have no respect for safety, we have no respect for the code. All right? So that's one of the things I want to say. The last thing is, the budget of the fire department of New York is $3 billion. The fire department alone, over $3 billion. You're talking about 58 billion for Nigeria, right? Or just Lagos?
They have an idea now.
So when I was in the UK and I was schooling, I remember we normally have fire drills.
I was coming to
and
that.
it's very important.
They
just don't tell you what time. And you know when it's winter and you're sleeping around 5, 6, the fire alarm goes off in the entire buildings.
You have to evacuate.
Whether you are having your bath or you are sleeping or whatever you are doing at that time, come out with your towel and run to the fire assembly point. And I think that we don't take fire seriously. We don't take fire seriously. I'm very sure that my mother's apartment was among those statistics you reeled out, because where she was living in Lagos was burnt, caught fire, and that's how she lost virtually everything. So you just hear, fire burned and someone had an attack, he died, because he doesn't know where to start from, or he or she doesn't know where to start from. But you can have fireproof doors. You can do...
Are people eating?
And for those who can afford it, I'm just saying, for those who can afford it, so that you don't allow fire to spread to other people and cause havoc to those who never chop. We don't even talk about fire assembly points in churches. If you go to civilized countries, they will tell you the number of people that should be in an environment, in a room, in a hall and all that.
I'm always close to the exit point. I don't know what's going on. I'm either always backed up to the wall so I can see everything that is going on.
Can you run?
Yes.
The ball is in your court, National Orientation Agency, and of course the Nigerian Fire Service. We've had too many fires lately. Competence is applied knowledge, and knowledge is power, but only if it's applied for the common good.
Well said, Funke. I'm here to dispense the knowledge you speak of. Hopefully, it will empower us all. Did you know that Nigeria carries the 4th highest HIV burden in the world? Did you know that over 2 million Nigerians are currently living with HIV and many don't even know their status? Did you know that Akwa Ibom State has the highest prevalence rate at 5.5%? Did you know that HIV testing and antiretroviral treatment are completely free in Nigeria? And most importantly, did you know that HIV is not a death sentence? With proper care and treatments, people living with HIV can thrive and live full, healthy lives. December 1st was World AIDS Day with a theme, Take the Right Path, reminding us of the urgent need to fight this epidemic and removal of social and legal barriers that prevent people living with HIV from accessing healthcare and living wholesome lives. The focus of World AIDS has moved from just awareness to taking a stand and supporting the affected. In Nigeria, countless individuals unknowingly live with HIV because they don't know their status. Taking the right path isn't just a personal responsibility. It is a shared commitment to a healthier future. Every action takes us closer to it. By getting tested regularly and encouraging others to do the same, you are not just protecting yourself, you are also protecting those you love and breaking the chain of transmission. As early detection leads to early treatment. By using condoms regularly, you are not just preventing unwanted pregnancies, you are also taking the right path towards preventing transmission. By educating others, especially the vulnerable, the young, and sex workers, you are taking the right path towards achieving an AIDS-free world by 2030. By providing support to people living with HIV, you are taking the right path towards breaking the chains of stigma. Stigma silences conversations, isolates people, and stops them from seeking the help they need. On this World AIDS Day month, let's ignite a wave of action, awareness, and care that sweeps across Nigeria. This month, let's all endeavor to get tested and know our status. Together, we can end this epidemic. When was the last time you got tested?
You remind me of my days as a country producer trainer for an HIV/AIDS project along the West African, in the West African region. A lot of work had gone into this in the past. I remember at some point the World Bank, even Radio, which is the UN Radio, and Abidjan Lagos Corridor Organization worked on this. Those are the people I worked with. And there's a lot of awareness about HIV. I remember Omololu, who used to run the Journalists Against AIDS, is late now, powerful work he did, Jades, you remember? Yeah. Those were the days of intense work on HIV prevention and awareness. And yes, you talked about antiretroviral drugs and treatment being free, yes. But I think because all of us as a collective, achieved success with the HIV interventions to the point where it's reduced considerably. We seem to have forgotten and relaxed, although there are still some organizations working on this. But I want to support your clarion call at this point that we should all try and get tested, getting tested.
We should all get tested.
Getting tested
is one part.
It is a big step to take for anyone because it's either this or this. It's either it takes you to a path that you didn't see coming. But at the end of the day, it takes courage to live authentically. I think we should just do the right thing, go and test, and not say, HIV, don't go now.
I trust God.
It's still there.
So there are intersections to this that I want to highlight because of the work I do. So many women who get up and say, oh, honey, can we go and get tested for HIV? Are going to get beaten. So many of them will be sent back home. And so it's the harmful normative practices occasioned by the patriarchal, ideas, that these women live with. That's their reality. And then we have so many women that go to the hospital and find out that they're infected because their husbands are with other partners. They dare not question the husbands for being with other partners. And then when they find out, how do they even open up to these people? In fact, on so many occasions, it's like, oh, well, you're my wife. So if you really love me, you should have no problem having a condition that will keep us both together. These are the realities that I see. And recently, a government program empowered survivors of HIV in a public function. What happened to the Anti-Discriminatory Act? And it was massive. It was hundreds of survivors that were empowered. And the media was brought in. I knew about it because I watched it on TV. And so people were sharing things. I said, oh, so anybody watching this would say, oh, whoever is receiving those things being shared must be the survivors. So how do you speak about breaking the stigma? How do you speak about all those things? Could those things not have been done without the cameras? Did the cameras need to be there to prove that work was going on?
Yeah, but that's another thing.
Did they seek consent from the participants?
How would we know?
Again, whether or not you sought consent, let's get to the part where the person who is at home that needs empowerment would be thinking, so if I don't give consent to be aired publicly for having this condition, there's nothing for me.
And I have heard something very interesting from somebody I know whose wife went to, I think she was doing antenatal, and then she came back and she said, oh, they did HIV screening for us, and my results came out, I'm negative. And so she then said, you should go actually and even get yourself tested. And he said, you know, get them, I know get them. And
is she his testing kit?
So now the question is, we have seen partners, I have seen also partners who
one is positive and the other isn't.
Positive and the other isn't. People feel, that once you have HIV is a death sentence, like we say. It is really not. People have lived years,
yes, indeed.
Tens of years, and they are still living, they still look healthy, and that's why they say HIV, they show for face. People need to proactively, and one thing that in terms of your advocacy that I like is the fact that knowledge is power. So the moments you actually do, when I do my medicals every year.
I do twice a year.
Exactly, same here. When I do my medicals twice a year, I know how careful I become. Because I'm like, make una no stain me.
Brand new.
There was this experience we had with a neighbor many years ago. And, lovely couple, wonderful kids. But we noticed that the wife, she just had a baby. She was just, growing lean every day, and she wasn't looking good. And one day, my wife visited and found her in a state that she wasn't just comfortable with. Now, took her to the hospital, and when they got to the hospital, the doctor took a look at her and just said, "Go do it, the HIV test."
Oh, sugar.
And when the result came out and it was positive, the doctor said, "There's no point, trying to give her a bed or whatever. Just take her to Lutz or something and let her start the treatment." Now, we found out later that it wasn't that the diagnosis, so to say, was not new. They knew.
They were praying over it.
And but they were praying over it. Now, it wasn't the case of whether they were, she was promiscuous or whatever. I think when they traced it, they found out that she had a very difficult childbirth, so she needed blood transfusion. And this is suspecting that must have been what had happened. The baby wasn't infected and all that.
Horrible acts of negligence by that hospital.
That was why, they felt that whatever happened after the baby was born, because the baby was not infected.
Let me quickly jump in to say that you don't get infected with HIV by sexual intercourse alone. It could be through transfusion, blood transfusion, as you said. It could be because of some exchange of fluid, not necessarily blood as well. And it could be because you used somebody's brush, you know. So because the basis of stigmatization is that, oh, it's because of promiscuity. That's why you now have HIV.
Thank you for that, Funke. At the table, we interrogate the issues and hopefully leave the table better informed and empowered for the business of nation building. Join us again this time next week as we take on fresh topical issues. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us.
It's goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh, you've started.
Yes, I have.